Welcome Year 12s to this next video. What I'm going to do in this one is take you through some applications questions looking at bank accounts. Now in a previous video, in a previous class in fact, we looked at simple interest. And what we're going to do is use a bank account example to calculate some of these simple interest payments that you might actually get if you have money invested in an account. So we'll look at a bank account example. There's two ways though that interest can be paid on bank accounts. And there's two ways that we'll look at. And that is to look at the minimum monthly balance or the minimum daily balance. So what I mean by that is if you think of our simple interest formula, which is interest is principal by rate by time over 100. What we're looking at is what is this value of P? How much interest are we going to get on the particular amount of money that we've got in our account if our account or the balance is changing constantly? If we've got money coming in, we've got money going out, obviously we might be spending as money that we've got in our account, or we might be depositing money frequently. How much interest are we going to get? What is the principal for our simple interest calculations? So that's really what we're trying to focus on when we look at the minimum monthly balance or minimum daily balance. So what this means is if you've only got a little bit of money in your account, obviously you're not going to be paid as much interest as someone who keeps a lot of money in their account. First of all, the minimum monthly balance, we'll look at that because that is really the easy one. What we'll do is look at some transactions for an account for a full month. And what we're trying to find is the lowest balance that appears for that whole month. So therefore the minimum balance for the month. And what some banks might do is look at the minimum balance for that month and then calculate the interest on that amount. So that minimum balance, this minimum monthly balance, that will become the principal in the simple interest formula. So what we'll do first is just have a look at this example here. It is for Nick's bank statement and it's for July, as you can see by the date here. Let's find the interest that Nick will earn in July on this money he's got in his bank account if it pays 7% per annum simple interest using the minimum monthly. So it will state here which kind of minimum balance that they're looking at, because like I said earlier, there can be minimum daily. So you do want to check, is it minimum monthly or is it minimum daily? Okay, so to start off with, first transaction that's listed here is for the 3rd. So the 3rd of July. But we're looking at the whole month in its entirety. So we really need to know what was the balance before the 3rd? What was the opening balance for July? Now if we have a look at this column here, you'll see that we have credits. Now credits mean that we have money that's coming in. Debit, which means that we have money being spent, money coming out of the account. And if you have a look at these values, if we have a look, the balance here is $337.50 and then 500 credit, and you will see that the balance goes up. That helps you to remember which one is which. So credit coming in, credit going out. It's common to think that credit means spending because you might think of a credit card and that you spend money, but in actual fact, a credit card just means that the bank is giving you credit. It's giving you money, really, to spend. If you had $2,000 on a credit card, then the bank is effectively giving you $2,000 to spend, but of course you need to pay that back to them with interest, of course, as well. Debit, think of your, you might have a debit card. That debit card is used to spend money. It's money coming out of your account. So you might like to think of it that way. Debit is money going out, credit is money coming in. Now if we think about this, on the 3rd we had a credit of $100 which brought the balance to $337. So before that day, our balance would have been $100 less than that. So it would have been $237.50. So it's important to just note if you don't have the opening balance listed, if you don't have the balance for the 1st, you should have a look, especially if there's a credit. If there's a credit, it means the balance was actually lower and you should be checking what the balance was. We want to find the minimum balance. So it is possible that the minimum was on the 1st or the 2nd of the month. If we don't check it, then it's possible that we could get the wrong answer if we haven't chosen the minimum. If we have a look at the balances now that we've decided that before the 3rd we had 237.50, you'll see that there is a balance down here that's lower, and it's 159.50. So that is our minimum balance. Therefore, the interest is going to be earned on that minimum, so just on that 159.50. So just over on the side, we can just make a note that our principal for this is 159.50. That's the minimum balance. Our rate was 7% per annum. That's a percentage. And time, well, it's 1 month. 1 month in years is 1/12 of a year. So let's do our interest formula then. Of course, it's PRT over 100. You've got that memorized by now. 159.50 by 7 by 1/12 over 100. And what you will find is there is not a lot of interest paid on this account. 93 cents, in fact. I've of course rounded that to 2 decimal places. This is in dollars. Of course, you could give your answer like this. But please do not, sorry, I made a mistake in showing you a mistake. Please don't do that. Okay, that is wrong. It's either $0.93 or if you convert it to the cents, times by 100, 93 cents. It's really unfortunate when you see mistakes like that. Okay. So that's our minimum monthly balance. Find your minimum balance for the month. Just be careful, just in case it might be in the first couple of days, therefore not listed. And then finally, calculate using simple interest formula the interest for the month. Don't forget your dollar sign as well. What I'm going to do now is look at minimum daily. This is a little bit more complicated. The reason is when we look at the minimum daily balance, it means that we need to look at what balance was the minimum for every single day in that month. Now, there is a faster way to do this because if there's minimal transactions, it means that we've got the same minimum balance for many days or many consecutive days. So we can work it out by sort of clumping the days together, determined by that minimum balance. So there's just one thing we need to remember. If you've deposited money into an account, so just say I go this morning, go to the bank and deposit $100 into my account. My account then is increased or credited by $100. But the minimum for that day will be the amount before I put that $100 in. So before the deposit was made, the balance was lower. So the minimum is before you make that deposit. This is really important as you'll see when we do this example. Now, if you withdraw money, so just say I took this $100 out instead, my bank account then would drop by $100. So the balance after it's dropped is obviously smaller. Therefore, the minimum value for that day will be after you make that withdrawal. Okay, knowing that, look, we've got the same example as we had before. So obviously the balance before this deposit was $237.50. So that's for the first couple of days. So before that, this is for the first and for the second. The reason is it starts here, you'll see, starts on the 3rd. Now this uses language a little bit different to the first example. You'll see it's used deposit instead of credit. So this is our credit or deposit or money coming in. This is our withdrawal or debit or money going out. So you can make these notes on there. Sorry, there isn't a lot of space. You can make these notes if you like, just to get you sort of a little bit more familiar with the sort of language that you might come across. So it's still in July. You can see it's the same figures we used before, but this time it's the minimum daily balance. So this is a little bit different to what we had before. What we want to do is set it up so that our workings are really clear. And what you will see down here is the first one done for us. I think it's a really good idea to set out your workings like this in a table because otherwise it can get really messy, and if you've made a mistake it makes it so much harder to find your mistake if your workings are not clear. So what we do is down in one column we'll have the different balances that the account had for the month. So our first one was 237, goes to 337, 837, 159, etc. So all of the balances for the entire month for that account, they are all listed in that column. Second, we have number of days that balance applies. So you see the first one's done. I'll go through that in a moment. Thirdly, we have calculations. So this is our simple interest formula. Principal, rate, time in years over 100, and then we'll have our interest earned over here. When we do our interest earned, I round it to do 3 decimal places in this column here, just so that when we total it up at the end, we don't lose that accuracy, because if we round too early, we can lose a little bit of accuracy. So let's go to 3 decimal places when we do these calculations. So let's begin. This is our opening balance for the month, 237.50. Now, how many days is it the minimum? Well, first of all, we know that it's the minimum on the 1st and the 2nd because it was the only balance on those 2 days. On the 3rd, $100 goes in. But remember, if 100 goes in, it was $237.50 on that day before that deposit went in. So the minimum on the 3rd is $237.50. Therefore, the number of days that the balance was at its minimum of $237.50 was 3 days, the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd, so inclusive of those dates. Therefore, when you do this calculation, over here, remember time in years, we're looking at just 3 days. So 3 days in years is 3 over 365. That's where that little bit comes from. When you do this and round to 3 decimal places, you get 0.137. So that's how much interest was earned on the first 3 days. So not a lot, 13.7 cents in fact. So very small amount. But that's just the first 3 days, and our balance was quite low. Let's have a look at the next balance, which was 337.50. Now if we've counted the first 3 days, we've counted from the 1st to the 3rd, then this means that the 337.50 must count from the 4th onwards. So we can't skip a day and we cannot have any overlap either. So from the 4th, the deposit, or the balance, sorry, is 337.50. So we need to work out how many days was at 337.50. The next change happens on the 7th, another deposit. Therefore, before this deposit goes in, the balance was still 337.50. So we need to include the 7th for this balance of 337.50 from the 4th to the 7th. On the 7th, $500 went in, so the balance went up. So the very next day, on the 8th, the minimum will be higher. But the minimum on the 7th is still $337.50. So how many days is that? Remember, you need to include the 4th. So sometimes looking at this, I see students go, okay, between the 4th and the 7th, there's 3 days. That's correct, but if you include the 4th, there's actually 4 days. 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th day. 4 days altogether. Therefore, when we do our calculations, now this can be a little bit messy, just in using this pen, so I apologize, but we have our principal, which is the balance, the appropriate balance, by 7, and this is by 4 over 365, and that must be over 100. When you do that calculation, you should get 0.259 rounded to 3 decimal places. Let's continue. So we've counted from the 4th to the 7th. We now need from the 8th onwards. On the 8th, the minimum balance will be this $837.50, so the day after it's deposited. And you can see that most of the month it's $837.50. What happens on the 21st? On the 21st, $678 is withdrawn. So when you take all that money out, you are left with only $159.50. So the minimum on this day, the minimum on the 21st, is $159.50. So if you have a look down here at our table, our $159.50 is down here. So we want from the 21st was the minimum there. So if we have a look here, the day before would be the 20th. So from the 8th to the 20th, the minimum must have been $837.50. Now, how many days is that? Well, we can do 20 minus 8. That would be 12 in between them, but we must include the 8th. So there's actually 13 days. Let's calculate that now. $837.50 by 7 by 13 over 365 over 100. Altogether, $2.088. Okay, so we're nearly there. We've just a couple more balances to go. On the 21st, the minimum dropped, or the balance dropped. So the minimum became $159.50. We now need to work out how many days was that the minimum. On the 28th, you'll see there's a deposit. But before that deposit's made, the minimum was still $159.50. Therefore, from the 21st to the 28th, the minimum was $159.50. So how many days is that? 28 minus 21, 7 plus 1, because we need to include that first day, 8 altogether. Write out the calculation. So 8 days this time, over 100, 0.245. Last one. Now, when you do get to the last one, it's one of the quick ways, really, is to, if you have a look at number of days that the balance applies, what we can do is add these up, and we should get the number of days in that month. So we're looking at July. There's 31 days in July. So let's add this up now. 3 and 4, 7, 7 and 13 is 20, and 8 is 28. So how many more days are there? There's 3 days left in that month. Having a look at it, it means that we go from the 29th to the 31st, and yes, that is 3 days. Okay, so finally, 209.50 by 7 by 3 over 365 over 100, and we get 0.121. Finally, let's calculate the total interest for July. What we're going to need to do is sum these interest calculations together, and what you should get, rounded to 2 decimal places, is 285. So our final answer, the total interest for that month, was 285. So just going up and just reiterating, you do need to make sure you show your workings really clearly, because as you can see, there's a lot of calculations going on. There's you need to work out the number of days for each balance. That can be really tricky. The interest calculation itself, you don't want to get be lost, I guess, in your workings here. So please, I urge you to show your workings really clearly in a table format. It does make it a lot easier, because then at the end, of course, you can add these up, check that they add to the 31, the number of days in that month. And what you should find is it does work out really nicely if you haven't made any mistakes. So $2.85 we earned. It doesn't seem like a lot, does it? But just remember, this looks like an account that's being used fairly regularly. So there's money coming in, money coming out, and really, if we're trying to earn interest, we'd be putting our probably money into a savings account, and we try not to withdraw money. from that savings. Therefore, we would make the most out of our interest. We would get the most from that money that we've got in our account. The next example I wanted to look at is, or does look more like a savings account. Well, it does state that it's a savings account here. The reason that I would think it was a savings account too, just by looking at it, is by the amount of money that's in there. Also, I can see that we've got quite substantial transaction amounts. We've got thousands of dollars here, so $2,000 coming in, and perhaps something was purchased. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it was a car and you needed to do repairs to your car, so you needed to take some money out of savings. That can happen too. So we've got oh, I've just done this the wrong way around. There you go. Make sure you don't do silly mistakes like that. We have money debited, that's coming out, and credited is going in. And make sure I pay more attention next time. So debit, money going out, we can see that happening, and credit, money coming in. Now you'll see here that we have a blank space. We've got a balance missing. So knowing that $2,000 has been debited, so $2,000 has come out, what we can do is subtract that from our balance here. So what we're left with is $71,226. Now that we've done that, we can start to calculate our interest, and you'll notice we are looking at, again, the minimum daily. So it says here that the interest is calculated daily. So we want the minimum daily balance for this 1 month period. We're working with March, so what we can do first of all is know that there's 31 days in March. So these numbers that we get here, they should add up to 31. Next, what we want to do is write out the balances that we have in this account. Now, because we've only got $2,000 coming out here and $4,000 coming in over here, what it means is there's not many balances that we need to work with, which is nice. If there's lots of transactions, it means we'd have lots of different balances, making it a lot more complicated. But luckily, the examples that you work with will only have a few. So that's our first balance, the opening balance on the 1st of March. Next balance dropped down to 71,226, but after that credit, after that 4,000 went in, we had a balance of 75,226. So a nice healthy savings account. What we need to do now is work out how many days did this first balance apply. If we have a look, it's from the 1st, obviously, so from the 1st, the next transaction's on the 10th. Now on the 10th, some money came out. So the balance went down on that day. So the minimum on that day was actually 71,000. The minimum on the 10th was 71. So that really will be counted in that row there. Therefore, this goes up until the 9th. It goes up until the day before. That's 9 days altogether. Calculate that, 73,226. The rate was 5.3. That's at the top of the page. And the time period is 9 days, so 9 over 365. That's over 100, and you get 95,695. So as you can see, really good amount of money actually when you've got lots in the savings account. So when the principal's really, really high, of course you're going to get a higher interest earned. This is why it's really, really handy to bump up your savings as fast as you can, because then obviously you're going to be earning more interest on those savings. Let's have a look at now this second balance, which was the 71,000 we've got from the 10th. Now, where does that end? Now, on the 29th, it bumps up another $4,000. So the minimum on the 29th is 71,226. Therefore, 29th needs to be included in this row. So how many days is that? Well, 29 minus 10 is 19. Add on 1, 20 days. 71,226 by the rate 5.3 by 20 over 365, as it was 20 days. Over 100, and this is a nice amount of interest, $206. Finally, we can see we've dealt with 29 days. How many are left? There's just 2 days left. So obviously from the 30th, that's when that credit that went in, that's when that would bump up the balance, and the minimum on the 30th would be 75,226, and it's just for the last 2 days, so 30th and 31st. Final calculation, 2 over 365, that's over 100 of course, and we're left with $21.846. Now let's add that all up, round to 2 decimal places, and you can see when you've got a lot of money in your savings, it's actually quite nice because this is the interest earned in March. So on the transaction list up here, at the end of March or the 1st of April, there'd actually be a credit. There'd actually be a credit called interest. And that was our $324.39. And that would be added to the balance here. So that's really nice. If you've got your money in there and you're saving really, really hard, you are rewarded every month by a lovely interest payment. So you can see the difference here between when you've got a fair bit of money in your savings compared to if you just have your regular account, such as this one up here, where you're spending money, money's coming in and going out quite regularly, and you only have an interest of $2.85. I mean, it's better than nothing, but again, this is where savings accounts are really, really good value. So thank you very much for listening to this video, and I will see you in class.